怎么回音呢？Okay. So we can start now. And so first, I would like to say thank you very much for your coming to attend this class online and on site. So as you know, so this class is So as you know, so this class is a global open course. So the name of the class is addressing So I think I should start again. Okay. Thank you very much for your coming to attend this class on site and online. So now this course, it's a global open course. So the name of the class, is addressing climate change. So in the context of carbon neutrality. So now, right now, in China and the world, the carbon neutrality is a very hot topic. So that's why, the course has attract so many students that come here to take the class. So now, the class actually consists of 8 lectures. So the first lecture is about global energy transition towards carbon neutrality. So I will be the lecturer for this class. And also the second lecture is about the effects and the impacts of climate change. So this lecture, these units will be given by Professor Luo Yong from the Department of Earth Science of this university. And the third lecture will be given by Professor He Kebin, who from the School of the Environment. So this is about the environmental co-benefits of carbon neutrality. And the fourth lecture, the key mitigation technologies for addressing climate change neutrality goals, will be given by Professor Wang Can, who also from the School of Environment. And the unit 5, will be given by Professor Cai Wenjia, who from the Department of Earth Science. So it's about this lecture is about the health effects of addressing climate change and carbon neutrality. And okay, so the unit 6 is about the climate change economics. So this lecture will be delivered by Professor Cao Jing from the School of Economics and Management. And the unit 7 will be given by Dr. Zhang Da from the same Institute of Mine, so the Institute of Energy, Environment, Economy, Tsinghua University. So this is talking about the China carbon neutrality, China carbon market development. Is also a very interesting topic. Last, not least, is about global climate change governance. So this lecture will be delivered by Professor Teng Fei. He's here. Okay, so he will be given the last the class. Okay, so this is the outline of this class. I would like to share with you some of my observations and on the global energy transition towards carbon neutrality. So now first let's take a look at what the carbon neutrality means. So based on the IPCC assessment report, you can see the carbon neutrality sometimes is also referred to as net zero carbon dioxide emission. So net carbon dioxide emissions are achieved when they are through anthropogenic CO2 emissions are balanced globally, so that anthropogenic CO2 emission, CO2 removals over a specific period. So this is the meaning of the carbon neutrality. And also maybe you heard of the climate carbon neutrality. The climate carbon neutrality is a concept of a state in which the human activities result in no net effects on the climate system. So this is I think is more broadened, so compared to the carbon neutrality. So this is because we are talking about the carbon neutrality. First, maybe we need to take a look at the concept. So now, so why we talking about the carbon neutrality? Because we need to address the climate change issues, specifically the global warming. So this slide shows. So there is almost linear relationship between the cumulative carbon dioxide emissions and the global warming. So you can see. So this is the cumulative CO2 emissions. So this is the temperature. So of the average temperature of the Earth surface. You can see there very the two is very closely related. So you can see if we keep the CO2 emission be larger, so there will be a result in more global warming, higher global warming. So this is, so as we know, the global warming is the biggest, is the one of the, maybe not one, is the greatest threat to the human society. So that's why we talking about the human. We're talking about the carbon neutrality and also the CO2 emissions. So I think Professor Luo Yong will give more talks about this topic. So we are talking about the CO2 emissions. Actually, the CO2 emission is very much related to the activities. So the activities of the human beings. So it's related to the economic development. It also related to the behaviors of all of us. So as a result, so in the future, we can have a different trajectories of CO2 emission. It's very much depending how we perform. So this is the very high CO2 emission trajectory. So you can see the CO2 emission can be doubled. So after the year 2040, and the peaking very late, before after the 2080. So and also so this curve is very high. Okay. So and also have another high CO2 emissions. So now the CO2 emission will be doubled. So by the end of this century, so this is the high CO2 emission trajectory. But this is the medium CO2 emission trajectory. So you can see the CO2 emission can be peak around 2040, then declining. So this okay. So now for those three categories, so it will lead to a very serious global warming. So this is not what we expected. So those two trajectories is something we expected. So we try our best to have the CO2 emission follow the curves. So this is the low CO2 emission trajectory. So this is a very low CO2 emission trajectory. For the low CO2 emission trajectory, you can see there is the net carbon dioxide emission take place around the year 2080. Okay, so if we have we secure the temperature rising is not more than 1.2 degree. So maybe we need to follow this curve. So that is the carbon neutrality can take place between the year 2050 to the year 2060. So this is a very low the trajectory with the CO2 emissions. So and we need to try our best to have the trajectory follow the two curves. And so this slide shows that what's the the relationship between the trajectory curve and the time when the carbon neutrality takes place and when the peaking takes place. So you can see that here, so this is the trajectories are simulated by different teams in the world. So those teams is also very famous teams in the world. So including the Center for Social Economic System Research and the PASTEM, Institute for Climate Change Research. So they are very famous modeling team in the world. So they model the pathways of CO2 emission, the energy-related CO2 emissions, and CO2 emissions request to achieve the 2-degree global, the 2-degree control targets. So this is if you can see. So if we have if we achieve the 2-degree control targets, so we need to something to peaking. So by around the year 2030, and we achieve the carbon neutrality between 2065 to 2075. So this is something like white. Okay. So now we. At the same time, so according to the the Paris Agreement, so we have a more ambitious targets. So it's the 1.5-degree control targets. To achieve these targets, so we need to the CO2 emission need to peak around the year 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality between 2045 and 2060. So I think all of you already know. So the President Xi announced China's new climate goals. China will be peaking the CO2 emission around before the year 2030 and achieve the carbon neutrality or the net zero CO2 emission around 2060. So that means China's new climate change pledge. So it's largely inconsistent with the 2-degree targets. So that's why. So after President Xi announced this new climate change goal, so the world, in general, gave a very high, very much appreciate the China's new climate change goals. Okay. So not China. So announced. So the China the net zero CO2 emission targets. So actually, so in the world, so there are approximately 24 parties. So of the United Nations framework framework Convention on Climate Change. So and announced their policy to achieve the net zero targets. So here you can see, and some of the announcement is already in the the long-term strategies, and that is the long-term greenhouse gas mitigation strategy. So and strategy, this is a official document needed to be submitted to the Secretariat of the UNFCCC. So the United Nations Framework Convention. And some announcement is not yet in the official documents submitted to the UNFCCC, but it's already announced. So you can totally it's about 24 parties. So and 24 parties you can see here. So you can. So here, so this is China. So this is the United States of America. So this is the Europe. Europe is already include their announcements into their official documents. so submitted to the UNFCCC. So you can see. So that means there is a trend. So and the global take more efforts to addressing the climate change. So I think now so far there is an unprecedented the agreement on the carbon neutrality. Before the opinion is heavily divided about the carbon neutrality. I think we have a new consensus on the issues. So now we are talking about the carbon. We are talking about the energy transition. So so this is a research report recently released. So by the International Energy Agency. So you can see. So we modeled the pathways to achieve the net zero CO2 emission trajectories. So this you can see. So you can see the by sectors, the trajectory by sectors. So this is the CO2 emission curve. So of the electricity sector, you can see the electricity sector contributes most of the carbon dioxide emissions in the world. And so you can see actually the sector, the CO2 emission from the power generation sector should be achieve the carbon neutrality around the year 2050. So although the global goal is to achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050. So that means I think there are two implications. So one is that it's a little bit easier for the power generation sector to achieve the net zero emission. This is one. And the second is that it's a little bit easier. So and the second is because the volume of the CO2 emission of the power sector is very big. So they need to achieve the carbon neutrality earlier. So then the cross energy system. So you can see the carbon. This is the CO2 emission from power generation sector. So after the year 2040, so actually they achieve the negative CO2 emissions. So why? So because they need to achieve the negative emission to offset some emissions from the industry and the building sectors. So where the CO2 emission mitigation is more expensive. Is more expected. It's more difficult. So you can see. So these curves. So and then this curve also, represents the cost. The cost. So of the mitigation. So for to achieve the carbon neutrality. And also, so in addition, so this is the CO2 emission by sector. Okay. So this also shows what the major some very breaking technologies needed to achieve the carbon neutrality. So you can see here about the BECCS, that is the bioenergy carbon capture and sequestration. So this is the DACCC, direct air carbon capture and sequestration. So this is to call it the breaking technology. Right now the technology is very costly, very expensive. But in the future, to achieve the carbon neutrality, so they needed to introduce or deploy this two kind of technologies. So and those two technologies, so is the negative CO2 emissions. Why? Because the bioenergy, so the biomass, so and also the crops, the forest, so when growing, so they absorbed CO2 emission. So the burning of the stocks, the crop stocks, and the woods, then the CO2 emission will go to the air. So actually, so this how to say carbon neutrality. So itself. So if we how to say capture the CO2 emissions from the burning of the biomass, then inject to the how to say to the ingest to this inside of the earth and sequestrate them, so they will be generate negative CO2 emissions. So that is net CO2 emission, also very important. The DCC, I think, is also a breaking technology. So that means it's captured technology directly from the air here. So you know the how to say the concentration of dioxide in the air. So it's very how to say the concentration. So it's very very small. So that is quite difficult to capture because of the low concentration of the CO2 emission in the air. So so that as a result, it's very costly and also need more energy. So and this is the two big barriers to the deployment of the direct air carbon capture sequestration technology. But I think in China, there's still a possibility to use the DACCS. Why? Because in the western region of China, there are open land, so they can install the technology. And also in the western part of China, how to say, they are very abundant. The wind resources and the solar energy resources, they use the renewable as energy to how to say to capture the CO2 emissions. I think that's why. So I mentioned that in China this is a possible solution. So in the future, but anyway, so it's also how to say an option to address the climate change to achieve the net CO2 emission. And now, so this is the picture of the how to say the energy transition to achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050. So this is based on the how to say the IEA the analysis. So you can see to achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050. So now the fossil fuels, the coal, oil, natural gas need to be peak. So around the year 2020, then the contribution, the share, so in the primary energy supply, so we need it to be declining. So and so right now, so is the energy system, so is dominated so by the fossil fuels. But by the year 2050, so there is a radical change. So in the structure of the energy, so the energy supply, so will be dominated so by the non-fossil fuels. So by you can see the solar and the wind, solar and the how to say the biomass and also the nuclear. So there is a traditional change. So now and IEA also so on the analysis what's the relative contribution of different measures to achieve the carbon neutrality. So I think this figure is a very interesting figure. So you can see activity, so economic activity and the behaviors. So will how to say increase the CO2 emission. Okay, so for example, by the year 2030, it will increase the CO2 emission from the current level by 25%. Okay, so but after adopting the mitigation measures, so the CO2 emission can be reduced by 50%. So to this level. Okay, so after year 2030. And again, the activities, the economic activities and economic activities and social activities can also increase the CO2 emission by 51%. Okay, again, so if we adopting the mitigation measures, so the CO2 emission can be reduced to net zero. So this is something like this is the analysis of the CO2 of the IEA report. You can see, this also shows the relative contributions to the carbon dioxide reduction. You can, the first, this is the behavior and avoided demands. That means this, and this is the energy efficiency improvement. So the energy efficiency is also very important. And this is the hydrogen-based option. So the hydrogen is also very new technology. It's a new energy. So hydrogen-based technology. I think Professor Wang Can will give more talk about the details of this technology. And so this is the electrification. This is the electrification. Electrification will also play a very important role. So electrification. Why? Electrification can play a large role because it's a very important way to use renewable energy sources. So, and this is the wind and the solar play a very large contribution. Last not least, so you can see the CCUS, the carbon capture and sequestration. If you compare, so the contribution, so of the mitigation measures in the year 2030 to the year 2050, you can see also very different. Again, the mitigation measures, again the behavior and the avoided demand play a larger role. And you can see that this is electrification also play a larger role. And relatively speaking, you can see the wind and the solar play a less role compared to the year 2030. So this is the the measures to how to address to the CO2 emission and take the transition make the transition take place. I would say, so after the releasing of the report, so the public opinion, so is very divided. Some believe the report, the analysis is very good, but others believe it's too ambitious. So there are different opinions on the IEA report. So generally speaking, I think the IEA analysis, this IEA report is an optimistic report. Okay. Okay. So I think this is the energy transition of the EU. So this slide you can show us. So shows the scenarios implemented by different research teams. So those teams also very famous research team. So you can see to achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050, you can see there is a similar changes. So in terms of the contributions of the individual the energy resources, you can see here this is the coal. So this is the natural gas. This is the oil. So you can see the EU energy supply is also right now dominated by the fossil fuels. So the renewable, so the contribution is much lower. So it's much smaller. So than those fossil fuels. But in the future, so to achieve the carbon neutrality, you can see that this is the fossil fuels contribution. So have been substantially decreased, and making the renewable play a major role. So in the energy supply. So in the future, you can see for any scenarios, there is agreement on these solutions. That it means transition from fossil fuels to the non-fossil fuels. Okay. So now the transition also those is the CO2 emission trajectories related to the scenarios. So I mentioned previously. You can see, and some scenarios. So it's is more optimistic. You can see the CO2 emission can be reduced by 56% by the year 2030 relative to the level of 1990. So, but some is not. But generally speaking, some is not so ambitious. But generally, I think those analyses. So I think it's very optimistic. So about the transition. So in Europe. Okay. So now what's the situation? The transition situation. So in the United States, so the people also very so you can see right now. So this is the current CO2 emission sources. So you can see natural gas. So in the U.S. energy supply is a large part of the energy from the natural gas. So you can see that's why the natural gas produced a large part of the CO2 emission. Okay, you can see. So now with coal, so the U.S. not consume so much coal as us, but it's still the amount is still not small. So now the diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, so it's very much it's oil also contribute a large part of the CO2 contribution right now. So now this analysis conducted by the Princeton University. So the analysis is led by Dr. Eric Larson, so an old friend of mine. So he conducted analysis. You can see, I think that the key assumptions. So it's related to the electrification, biomass, and the renewable. So because of the assumption, on the three technology, so it's very much change the pattern of the transition pattern. So you can see here, so it's very much highlight the electrification. Here E plus means high electrification. So if high electrification, so you can see the energy and industry emission can achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050. And for under this scenario, you can see a large part of the CO2 emission will be will be addressed by the geological sequestration. That is a CCS, because you can even in the year 2050, you can still a large amount of the fossil fuels, the natural gas and the oil, So that's how to address the CO2 emissions. That is by the deployment of CCS, carbon capture and sequestration. So now, this is the scenario of E minus. That means it's not so high electrification. So in this context, so that you can see, by the year 2050, more fossil fuels left still in use, and to address the CO2 emission to achieve the carbon neutrality, that means that needs to deploy more CCS technologies. So this is so this scenario. So it's about electrification is not so high, but adopt more biomass. So you can, in this context, so you can see the situation. You can see. So this is a little bit similar. So in the pattern, okay, and to this scenario is the very high electrification and not so much renewable, not 1% renewable. So not 100% renewable. So you can in this context you can use also so but in the year 2050 there's still some fossil fuels left. So in the energy system, in this context we also need to use the carbon capture and sequestration technology. So now the last scenario is about electrification, very high electrification. So and also 100% renewable, 100% renewable. So in this context, you can see no need for the carbon capture and sequestration because it is a 100% electricity energy system. So this is some analysis. So on the transition pathways. So in the United States. So I think all of you already noticed that. So you can see for any scenarios. So after the year 2030, coal use will be disappearing by the year 2030. So that means the phasing out of coal. So in the United States, so will be much earlier. So by the take place, the phasing out of coal much earlier by the year 2030 compared to China. Okay, so I think this is this slides this is the previous this slides where I previously show you here again. So you can here you can see the global CO2 emission to achieve carbon neutrality. So you can take the low trajectory, low emission trajectory. You can have a low, very low, carbon dioxide trajectory. So and we also just I mentioned the previous the analysis is conducted by the teams, international teams. So now I like to share with you some of the analysis by all teams. So you can see. So this is the energy-related CO2 emissions toward the carbon neutrality by the year 2080. So it's something consistent with the low CO2 emission trajectories. So we use the China in global energy model. So this model it comes from a joint collaboration research project by our institute and the MIT the group. So we use the model to model the global trajectory. You can see here. So this is the China. Okay, the CO2 emission be peaking before the year 2030 and achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2060. It's very much inconsistent. So with the China's new climate goal. Okay, so this is the CO2 emission of the United States. So you can see they are to achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050, and the EU and the Japan. That means most of the developed economies can achieve, assuming they achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050. So now those is the CO2 emission of India. You can see the India. So the CO2 emission, the volume, so will be increasing. So from right now in the future, and so to address the global CO2 emission. So after year 2050, more efforts will be taken to address the CO2 emissions in the developing nations. So this the figures. Okay. So this is the global energy supply mix. You can see right now it's also here is the current situation. So the global energy system is dominated by the fossil fuels. Majority of the energy supply come from the fossil fuels, the coal, oil, and natural gas. Again, so by the year 2080, and the share of the fossil fuels will be decreased substantially. But globally, from the global perspective, there are still some fossil fuels already, some fossil fuels left. So in the energy system. So why? So because it's very much there is how to say a trade-off. So there is how to say a comparison of the cost, so of the different options. So you can use a 100% renewable option, but you can also use how to say introduce the carbon capture sequestration technology to offset the CO2 emission. So then based the technology development. So in the future, if we use if we how to say deployment, if we introduce the CCS technology, the BECCS technology, the direct air capture, is compared to the 100% renewable option. It's relatively cheap. It's cheaper. So it's cheaper. So this is so in the economics, so there is a marginal abatement cost, and for the use of renewable the same. So if you use for achieve 100% renewable energy system, is very costly. So in this context, so maybe we can use more. We use the CCS technology, the BECCS technology, and the direct air capture technology. Maybe it's more cheaper. So okay, so then this is the how to say the global transition to achieve the carbon neutrality goals. Now I would like to take more. Next I would like to see some information. So see some of my observation or analysis about the China's new climate goals. So because so I assume so you also interested in the detailed analysis so on China. So now so these slides so gives the key elements of China's new climate goal. Why we call it new climate goals? Because it's compared to the China's climate goal or the China climate pledge, the climate pledge submitted to the UNFCCC. So compared those pledge, there is an update so on the key components of China's climate policy. So the first is peaking the carbon dioxide emission before the year 2030. But according to the nationally determined contribution of China submitted to the United States, so it's about peaking the carbon dioxide emission around the year 2030. So you can see there is an update, and also the second is reducing the carbon dioxide emission per unit GDP by more than 60%. Relative to the level of the 20 and 2005, but according to the according to 2015, the nationally determined contribution, so it's about 60 to 65%. So you can see there is an update, and also so increasing the share of non-fossil fuels in total primary energy supply to 25% by the year 2030. But the previous goal so is 20%. So there is an update. Last and not least, I think is about carbon neutrality. So by the year 2060, it's the first time for China to announce the time to achieve the carbon neutrality. So there's a big progress. So in the China's climate change policy. So okay, so this is the new climate change goals. So we also use the model to try to simulate the transition pathways, and also to give a interpretation. So what it means so for China, for the energy system, and also so for the economic system. So this is what I would like to talk later. First, so we use the model. So if we need if if we understand the pathways, we need a model. So here, I think the prime model is also the China global energy model. So this model is developed through a 6-year joint research project with MIT, and this model is widely used. So in the major energy and climate policy analysis. So for the different government agencies, such as the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, and the National Development Reform Commission, and also the National Energy Administration. So this is anyway. So this is familiar. This is a mature model. So, and we also using the several. We also use the 3 sector models. The sector models to to understand in detail about the technological options. The 3 sector models. One is the energy, one is the renewable energy planning and operation model. So this is and the transportation sector model, and also the building the energy model. So those models have been used for the China new climate goal analysis. So I think this is the results of analysis for China to achieve the carbon neutrality, and how the energy system how the energy system transition can take place. So I think one is to increase the energy efficiency. So you can see that means to decrease the energy per unit GDP. So according to our analysis, so you can see that the energy consumption per unit GDP can be reduced by more than 75%, so relative to the year 2020 to the year by the year 2060. So this is so this is very important measure. The measure. The second is the substitution. So and a fuel switching from the fossil fuel to the renewable to the nuclear. That means to reduce the carbon emission per unit energy supply. That means to reduce the energy carbon intensity. So based on our analysis, so the energy carbon intensity can be reduced by over 80%. So you can see this is the 2 major directions for the energy system transition. So you can see, right? You can see. So that means, how to say, in the energy supply mix. So the share of non-fossil fuels energy consumption, that is the renewable plus the nuclear in the primary energy supply, will be increased from currently 16% to over 80%. So our analysis shows there is some sensitivity analysis. There is a range. So based on the based on the policy, so on the carbon neutrality, and based on the policy documents recently released by the State Council and the Central Committee of the Party, so by the year 2060, the non-fossil fuel contribution should be over 80%. So it should be more than 80%. So you can, the number is very much in the reach of our analysis. Okay. So this is the the picture of the different energy. So in the energy supply. So you can firstly you see the coal. Right now the coal is constitute a large part of the energy supply. So in the this 5-year plan period, the coal there will be no rise. So so after year 2025, so there will be the coal consumption should be decline slightly. But after year 2030, so there will be a more obvious reduction. So for the coal, so it's in the future. This is the oil. So okay, the oil could be peaking around the year. The oil consumption should peak around the year 2030. Then the consumption will be declining. The natural gas, so the consumption will peak around the year 2025. Then the contribution will be declining. So you can what's the in the future? So the most of the increased energy demand should be met by the renewable and nuclear, that is non-fossil fuels. So particularly you can see here is the wind and the solar play a very large role, and so this is the share of this is the contributions of hydrogen. So this is the contribution of nuclear. So the nuclear in the future can play a larger role. So according to our estimation, by the year 2060, approximately 14% of energy supply can come from the nuclear. So that means if you choose a career related to nuclear, so that will be that should be bright. Okay. So this is in the Eric Larson, the American public analysis, very much emphasize electrification. So here we also, I think in China, we also believe electrification should play a very important role. So in the future, right now, the share of electricity in the final energy consumption right now, so it's about 27%. But in the future, so it should be more than 70%. So why? So because electricity is the major way to use the renewable energy sources, for example, solar, wind, and the nuclear. So that means that means in the future we should we can electrify everything. So even in the transportation sector, we can have electrical vehicles. So in the building, so we use more the heat pump. So and in the industry, so we also use more electricity. So this make the energy transition possible and using more renewable. So okay, so in this context, because electrification so is a very important measure to achieve for the energy transition. So this shows so in the future, China's total electricity consumption will be keeping going up. So for a very long time. So right now, the per capita electricity consumption so is about 5,400 kilowatt hours. So, but by the year 2060, the per capita electricity consumption can be as high as 11,000 kilowatt hours. So that based on the analysis, and also that there is a deep decarbonization of the electricity system. So we can see by the year 2060, so the contribution of the non-fossil fuels, that is the renewable plus nuclear, can be as high as over 90%. So that is a big that is a radical change. So from right now to in the future of the electricity system. So this is the pictures so of the decarbonization of the electricity system. So you can see, so from right now to the year 2025, so there is a slight increase of the coal-fired electricity, but afterwards, so the coal-fired electricity will be declining in the future. So and most of the increase so in electricity generation will come from renewable and nuclear. And you can see, so from the year 2025, the CCS technology, the coal-fired, the CCS technology, the coal-fired and the carbon capture sequestration technology can be used. So in the power generation, that means the coal-fired power plants needed to install the carbon capture facility. So after the year 2035. So in the year 2060, there are still some coal-fired power plants, but all those coal-fired power plants will install carbon capture and sequestration facilities. So you can see here. And also there are some amount of biomass power generation with CCS that generate negative CO2 emissions. So this is the amount of the deployment of the CCS and the carbon removal in China. So you can see based on the previous the energy supply mix. So even in the year 2060, there are still some coal, oil, and natural gas so left in the system. How to address this? How to address the CO2 emissions? So that is to introduce the carbon capture and sequestration. So you can see large of the CCS will be used in the power generation sector, but in the oil and steel sector, there are still a large amount. In those sectors also still needs install a large amount of the CCS technology. And so finally, you can see this is the carbon removed, but the bioenergy carbon capture sequestration technologies. So the amount is still very big. And last, so not least, so this is the carbon dioxide emission removed by the direct air capture technologies. So you can see. So you can see eventually the total the CO2 emission addressed, the total CO2 emission captured and sequestered and also removed by the CCS technology and the bioenergy CCS technology and the direct air capture technology can be over 2 billion ton in China, 2 billion ton. So it's also a big amount. So as a result of energy efficiency improvement, the fuel switching and the installation of the CCS technology, and also the deployment of the carbon removal technologies, so eventually, we can eventually, so you can achieve the carbon neutrality of the energy system with a high possibility. So this is something like this. So you can see the CO2 emission could be peaking around between 2025 and 2028, then declining. So, so this is the CO2 emission from the electricity sector. So first, so we can see, so there is the carbon neutrality, the net zero emission, the net zero CO2 emission could take place much earlier. So then the energy system, so it's around 2045. So then there will be negative CO2 emissions to offset the CO2 emission from the industry and from the building sector, where the mitigation cost, the marginal abatement cost is extremely high. So now, and we also know the United States announced to achieve the carbon neutrality by the year 2050. And at the same time, they also announced to achieve the carbon neutrality of the electricity system around the year 2025. So there is, the electricity system, the electricity sector to achieve the net zero CO2 emission about 15 years earlier. So this is the energy system, and at the same time, so we also need a structural change. So in the energy, in the economy, okay. So that means that shows the future. So of the structure change. So in the energy, in the economy, you can see this the service sector. The service sector, the contribution of service sector will become larger and larger. So on the opposite, so this is the contribution of the energy intensive or carbon intensive sector. The contribution in the economy will be declining. Okay. This is also very much so important. So now this slide shows the economic. This shows the growth rate. So the growth index of different sectors. So you can see here. So this is those are the sectors with a high high growth rate. So you can see this is those sectors is fossil energy related sectors. So although the natural gas sector, the output increased by the year 2020, but later, so there will be declining. And most of the energy intensive, carbon intensive sector, there is no, high growth or keeping almost stable. And also, so in the context China, the energy system transition take place, so with more new technology available, and making the economic growth be more of high quality. That means that the energy transition will not much affect the economic growth of China. So you can see, so even under the carbon neutrality transition, so the carbon neutrality transition, so by the year 2020, by the year 2025, by the year 2035, the per capita GDP can be more than $20,000 US dollars. By the year 2050, so the per capita GDP can be as high as over $30,000 US dollars. So this just showed because there are big concerns about the energy, the carbon neutrality goal policy, and the transition if have a very big negative impact on the economy. So these are big concerns for most of the developing nations. But because with the technology innovation, so there are new technology available, so it not so much affect the economy. So this is what we would like to see. So now here is, I think this is the highlights of China's energy transition. So towards the 2060 carbon neutrality, the efficiency figures, and the electrification, and the fuel switching, and the electric decarbonization. So I think those are the figures maybe can features the energy system transition, or particularly the transition of China. Okay, so they are talking about the transition. The transition cannot take place autonomously. So they need how to say enabling environment. That means they need some policy and to make the transition take place. So and in China, so I think this is the recent progress. What's the recent development of the climate policy? So in China, first is about the institution settings. You know that there is the how to say the national leading group on carbon peaking and carbon neutrality is created in the State Council. It's a leading institution to coordinate the carbon peaking, the carbon neutrality issues. And also the similar groups are set up in the ministries and also the provinces. I think the institutional setting is very important for any policy formulation. And also action plans on carbon peaking. So there is the general action plan, so it's issued by the State Council, but also there are action plans by sectors, the covering most of the carbon-intensive sectors of energy, industry, transport, and building construction. And also there is a regional action plans. That means the province and the cities also have formulate their own plan to address the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality issues. And last not least, so I think it's a new policy development is the national emission trading system. You know, the allowance trading started on July 16. So with the carbon price around $8 per ton. So and after almost 10 years of preparation, now the national emission trading program so eventually start operation. So I think it's very much a new development. So I think now I would like to stop this evening's lecture by saying that addressing climate change has been given an unprecedentedly high position in Chinese politics and become a key element of China's development paradigm. So I think that means create more opportunities for you guys and young people. Okay, thank you very much. So.